The room froze the second she fell to her knees. There were over 100 people in that glossy, over-air-conditioned conference hall. Servers weaving through crowds with trays of mini quiches and sparkling water. Corporate banners draped along the walls like silent witnesses. Keynote music still playing from the last speaker's walk-off. And then, there she was. Marcia, in a sleek navy suit, mascara smearing down her cheeks as her sobs cracked the whole room open like thunder in a library. All because she saw me. Just me. I didn't say a word. Didn't move. Didn't even blink. Because what do you do when the woman who ghosted your entire existence suddenly decides to fall apart in front of your company's board of directors? 5 years of silence, and her first words were a sound. A noise, raw, broken, collapsing from somewhere deep inside her. I didn't expect that. I always thought I'd fantasized the pain, over-exaggerated the hurt. But the way her body gave out, the way her mouth moved like she was trying to speak but couldn't find air, it almost made me forget what she did. Almost. And yeah, I could feel the attention shift. Colleagues whispering, phones half-lowered mid-text, a few awkward glances between execs. Everyone wondering why the most composed-looking woman at the event was now sobbing like she'd just found out someone died. And more importantly, why I looked like the ghost that haunted her. I wish I could say I felt powerful in that moment. But honestly, I just felt tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that comes from trying to rebuild your life from ashes no one else even sees. You have to understand, I didn't come here to see her. I didn't know she'd be attending. I didn't know her startup merged with one of our partners. I didn't even want to be at this summit. I'd faked a smile in the mirror that morning just to convince myself I was human enough to get through networking without internally screaming. Then I walked in and boom. There she was, back from the dead. As if she hadn't shattered my entire world in one weekend half a decade ago. And now, she was on her knees. On her knees. But let me be very clear. This isn't some story about redemption. This isn't about me forgiving her. Because you don't forgive someone who weaponized your love and used it as an escape hatch. You survive them. That's what I did. And this? Her tears? Her shock? Her shame in public? It wasn't karma. It was just the part of the movie where the villain realizes the hero didn't die in the explosion. I adjusted my tie, took a sip of my water, looked down at her with every ounce of calm I never got from her when I begged for answers, and said coldly, "Get up, Marcia. You're embarrassing yourself." Her name echoed behind me as I walked away. "Lowell," she croaked, almost too quiet to hear over the soft jazz humming from the stage speakers. "Lowell, please." I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, slowly, deliberately, weaving through tables like I wasn't the epicenter of the most awkward scene at the Denver Tech and Leadership Forum. My hands were shaking, but I stuffed them in my pockets so no one would see. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of knowing I still felt anything. Let them wonder. Let the senior execs whisper. Let her coworkers pick her up off the floor. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. Not after what she did. Not after what she chose. I made it out into the hallway before I finally stopped, leaned against the wall, and tried to breathe. My heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon in dress shoes. The air smelled like hotel carpet and recycled ambition. I hated how much she still affected me. Hated that just the sight of her face could shove 5 years of carefully reconstructed peace straight into a shredder. Because here's the truth, I didn't rebuild myself for her. I rebuilt myself because she left me in ruins. After she disappeared, after the ghosting, after the radio silence that left me screaming into unanswered emails and secondhand voicemails, I fell. Hard. Lost my job. Couldn't hold a conversation without stammering. I used to cry at commercials. Yeah, commercials. There was one about a dog finding its way home, and I bawled like a toddler in the cereal aisle. But I forced myself to get better. Not stronger, just better. Quietly. I didn't post some big glow-up on social media. I didn't travel the world or start a podcast. I just showed up to therapy. I started cooking again. Bought a plant. Watered it. Bought another. Eventually, I stopped checking her name online. Until last week, I'd finally stopped wondering where she was. And now she was in the same room as me. A ghost given skin again. Of course, she followed me. I heard the frantic tapping of heels behind me just before I pushed open the doors to the lobby. I didn't stop, but she caught up, out of breath and unrecognizably desperate. "Lowell, wait, please," she said, grabbing my arm. I froze. Her hand was shaking. I could feel it through my sleeve. The same woman who once told me, "We both know I'm the stronger one," was now gripping me like I was the only stable thing left in her life. I turned slowly, forcing myself to keep my face still. I didn't want her to see the swirl of emotions underneath. Rage, sadness, the faint scent of her perfume trying to knock me back into old habits. She looked terrible. I mean that literally and metaphorically. Her eyes were swollen, makeup smudged, foundation cracking under the tears. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was something deeper, like she hadn't slept in years. Like she'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. "I didn't know you'd be here," she whispered. "Good," I said. "Because if you had, and you still came, that would have been worse." She winced. There was a silence. Not the cold kind. Not yet. Just the heavy, heart-clogging kind where both people are suddenly aware they're standing in the wreckage of what used to be a life. "I tried to find you," she said, voice trembling. "No, you didn't." I didn't raise my voice. Just let the words land like quiet little knives. "I did." Her breath caught. "You blocked me. Your email bounced. Your number changed. And your voice still sounds like a lie," I muttered. She backed away like I'd slapped her. Honestly, it felt better than I thought it would. But then she said something I didn't expect. Something that shook me more than her tears. "I wasn't with him, Lowell. Not like you think. I swear. I left because I was pregnant." My entire body went cold. Pregnant? That word hit me like a truck full of bricks rolling off a cliff. I blinked, trying to process if I even heard her right. Pregnant? When? With whose child? And why? Why would she leave me instead of telling me? That was when she started crying again. Not dramatic, not like in the ballroom. This time it was quieter, more painful, and somehow more dangerous. Because I knew right then, the real story hadn't even started yet, and I wasn't ready for it. I stood there frozen. The word pregnant just hovered in the air between us, thick and poisonous, like it was never meant to be spoken out loud. And of all the places for her to drop that bomb, this sterile, echoey hotel lobby that smelled like lemon disinfectant and hollow promises. This was the worst possible stage. I blinked. My mouth opened, but no words came out. What do you even say to that? I'd spent years trying to stop thinking about her, and now she was shoving a secret straight into my face like it was supposed to explain everything. Pregnant? With what exactly? A child I never knew? A child that existed? Or was this some twisted attempt to rewrite the past and paint herself as a victim? "You're lying," I finally said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was thinner, weaker. I hated how fast the doubt crept in, but I'd been through too much to let her twist me back into the confused, heartbroken guy she left behind. "No, Lowell, I'm not. I didn't tell you because She paused, swallowed hard. "I didn't know what to do. I panicked." "You panicked and vanished," I shot back. "You didn't leave a note. You didn't text. You didn't even let me hate you properly. You just evaporated." Her eyes filled again, and for once I didn't care. I used to bend myself in knots every time she looked even mildly upset. But now, it felt like watching a stranger try to mourn someone they murdered. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "But things changed. Fast." I took a step back. My head was spinning. This didn't feel real. It felt like a sick game she was playing at the worst possible time. "What happened to the baby?" I asked, afraid of the answer. She hesitated, then said something that hit me harder than anything before it. "There was no baby, Lowell. That stopped everything. My breath, my thoughts, my anger. Gone." She kept going. "I thought I was. I missed my cycle. Took a test. It was positive." I freaked out. But a week later, I went to the doctor. False positive. Nothing there. Just stress. I stared at her, my chest hollow. "So instead of talking to me, you just ran." "I couldn't face you," she said. "I thought you'd resent me. Or worse. I'd tell you, and you'd stay. Out of obligation. Not love." I laughed. A cold, bitter laugh that scared even me. "Wow. So you decided for me. You erased me from the decision entirely." She didn't respond. That's when I realized she wasn't just crying because she saw me. She was crying because the guilt had finally started to rot her from the inside out. And now, 5 years later, she wanted me to be the one to bury it for her. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Or at least, I didn't want to be. I walked away before she could say anything else. I couldn't stand there any longer listening to her rewrite history like it was some forgotten blog post she could update with a better ending. She called after me again, But I didn't stop. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get as far away from her voice as I possibly could without making a scene. Again, I ended up in the parking garage. Third level. My rental car was parked under a flickering light that made the whole place feel like a crime scene. I leaned against the hood and just stared at the concrete. Breathing was hard. Thinking was harder. The sound of my heartbeat was louder than the music that had been playing back in the conference hall. But here's the thing. While she was pouring out her half-truths and hoping to be forgiven with tears and time, she had no idea what I'd been through after she left. She thought she was the only one carrying a secret. Please. I hadn't told anyone what happened in the months after she ghosted me. Not my coworkers. Not my sister. Not even Kyle, my only real friend, who literally sat with me on my apartment floor when I couldn't stop shaking from anxiety. Nobody knew what really happened that winter. How close I came to checking out completely. How many nights I stayed up staring at the ceiling, begging some invisible force to give me a reason to keep existing. No one knew I had disappeared, too. Not physically, but emotionally. Spiritually. I became a shadow in my own life. A placeholder at my own job. I stopped caring about my health, my bills, my future. I missed my best friend's wedding. Ignored every birthday. Christmas came and went, and I didn't even notice. I stopped returning calls. I stopped being me. Because when Marcia walked out, she took more than herself. She took the last version of me that still believed in people. I remember the exact moment I broke. It wasn't even dramatic. I was standing in line at a coffee shop, and the guy in front of me ordered her favorite drink. Large caramel latte, extra hot, with cinnamon dust. I had to walk out before I burst into tears like a maniac. After that, I just stopped trying. And now here she was. In the same city. In the same hotel. Looking at me like she hadn't detonated my life from the inside out. I should have ignored her. Should have gotten in the car, driven away, and left her to drown in her guilt. But instead, I did something worse. I went back inside. Not to talk to her. Not to comfort her. But to tell her something I never thought I'd say. Something she didn't see coming. Because while she had been hiding from the past, I'd already buried it. With someone else. And she was at this event too. I walked back into the conference hall like I hadn't just relived 5 years of emotional ruin in a parking garage. My heart was still thudding in my chest, but I smoothed my jacket, adjusted my badge, and forced my face into that corporate smile mask we all wear when we want people to stop asking questions. Because I had something to finish now. She thought she could show up out of nowhere, cry in front of a crowd, dump a confession into my lap like a grenade, and expect, what? Closure? Forgiveness? A warm hug, and a thank you for finally telling me. But what Marcia didn't realize was that this time, she wasn't in control of the story. I had already written a new chapter, and the woman helping me write it was standing just across the room, sipping from a glass of champagne and laughing at something a junior consultant said. Her name was Delaney. And no, she wasn't some rebound or a replacement. She was real, calm, steady, the opposite of the chaos Marcia always dragged behind her like perfume. Delaney and I weren't married, not even engaged. But she knew the truth about my past, all of it. And she didn't flinch when I told her. She listened, stayed. She saw me. Marcia never did that. Not really. She always loved the version of me she had edited down in her mind. The quiet one. The predictable one. The one she could count on to forgive anything because he's too soft to stay angry. But I wasn't soft anymore. I was tired. And Delaney was proof I'd finally stopped bleeding from wounds Marcia left open. As I walked back toward the ballroom, I caught sight of Marcia again. She was seated now, alone, near the side exit. Her hair was pulled back in that way she always did when she was overwhelmed. Her mascara had been wiped away, and her eyes were red. She looked smaller than I remembered. And for a brief second, just a flicker, I felt something close to pity. Then Delaney saw me. She smiled, not the sugary kind, but the kind that felt like sunlight on my face after a long winter. She walked over, rested her hand gently on my arm, and said, "You okay?" I nodded, and that was all she needed. Marcia saw us. Her eyes widened, and she stood up like something had shocked her spine. Her hands clenched. Her face turned pale again, but this time it wasn't grief I saw in her expression. It was fear, confusion, maybe even regret. She took one step forward, toward me, toward us, but then stopped. I tilted my head. Not smug, not cruel, just done. Delaney leaned in slightly and whispered, Is that the one? I nodded again. Yeah. And then I added, just loud enough for Marcia to hear. She used to be everything. Now she's just someone I used to know. Marcia didn't move. She just stood there, frozen, watching the version of me she never expected. Because the man she broke was gone. And I wasn't coming back. I should have known she wouldn't let it end there. Marcia never handled losing control well, and seeing me with someone like Delaney must have split her open in ways I never could have planned. She stood there for a while, frozen, like her mind was scrambling through old memories, trying to rewrite the past into something that justified what she did. But she didn't stay still for long. 15 minutes later, while Delaney was introducing me to a panelist from Atlanta, I noticed movement over her shoulder, sharp, direct. Marcia was making her way across the room, clutching a half-empty wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I saw it in her eyes even before she opened her mouth. She wasn't coming to apologize. She was coming to reclaim something. She reached us mid-sentence and interrupted without even pretending to be polite. "Lowell," she said, looking only at me. "Can we talk? Alone?" Delaney turned slightly, confused but calm. I gave her a small nod. She didn't need to say anything. Her hand stayed lightly on my forearm, a silent reminder that I didn't have to fall back into old patterns. "I'm in the middle of something, Marcia," I said flatly. "If it's urgent, say it here." Her lips parted. I don't think she expected me to say that. Not in public, and certainly not with someone else standing right beside me. She glanced at Delaney like she was some assistant I had picked up along the way, like she didn't matter. That's what made what happened next so satisfying. Marcia scoffed, then turned to Delaney with that familiar, patronizing smile she used to use on waitstaff and receptionists. "I'm sorry, this is kind of personal. Do you mind giving us a second?" Delaney didn't even blink. She looked Marcia dead in the eye and said, "Oh, I don't mind. But you should know I'm not going anywhere." I almost choked trying not to smile. The confidence in Delaney's voice wasn't sharp or performative. It was calm, final, like a door closing gently but firmly in someone's face. Marcia's expression flickered. A crack in the mask. "I just think he deserves to hear what I have to say without distractions," she said, trying to recover. "We were married. I think that still means something." "Were," Delaney repeated. "And if it meant anything, you wouldn't have walked away without a word." Boom. You could feel the air shift. People nearby had started pretending not to listen, which always meant they were definitely listening. Marcia turned back to me, red-faced now. "Seriously? You're letting her speak for you?" "I don't need her to," I said. "But she says what I'm thinking. And for once, that's kind of nice." I watched her jaw tighten. Her eyes were wet again, but this time it wasn't sorrow. It was frustration. The reality of it all was crashing down on her now, and she didn't like the view from the bottom. She looked at Delaney one more time, and in the most brittle voice I've ever heard her use, she whispered, "He was mine first." Delaney didn't even flinch. She just smiled and replied, "And now he's finally his own." Marcia turned and walked away. But this time, I was the one who didn't look back. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought walking away from her twice in one night. First when she broke down, then again when she tried to insert herself between me and Delaney, would finally close the book. But of course, it wasn't over. Not with Marcia. People like her don't just walk off into the night. They burn their bridges slow and loud, dragging everyone into the fire with them. The conference was winding down. Some people were still mingling near the stage, others heading out with their swag bags and fake smiles. Delaney and I found a quiet spot near the lobby cafe where the noise faded just enough to breathe. She squeezed my hand and said she was proud of me. I didn't even know how to respond to that. It had been years since someone said they were proud of me and actually meant it. But then I saw him. A man, late 30s, salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, the kind of guy who screamed networking addict from a mile away. But I wasn't looking at his wardrobe. I was staring at his face, because it was familiar. Too familiar. He was standing near the elevator talking to Marcia, laughing. My stomach dropped. I couldn't place him at first, but something about the way he held himself, the overly confident posture, the condescending smirk, it triggered something deep in the pit of my memory. And then it hit me. 3 months before she left, Marcia had a leadership development workshop out of town. She mentioned some consultant running it, a former executive from some Fortune 500 company who gave her incredible clarity. I remember thinking it was strange how much she brought him up after that weekend. How she suddenly started using phrases like strategic detachment and emotional optimization. It was him. It was that guy. And now he was here, still in her life. Delaney followed my gaze. You know him? I nodded slowly. I think he's why she left. Her eyes narrowed. That guy? I'd bet my life on it. As if on cue, Marcia glanced our way, and her face went pale. Not like before. This wasn't guilt. This was panic. She pulled him aside, started whispering urgently. But it was too late. The damage was done. I'd connected the dots. She hadn't run away because of a pregnancy scare. She hadn't ghosted me because she was afraid I'd stay out of obligation. She left because she'd already moved on, with someone else, and she didn't have the guts to say it. So she let me fall apart instead. Let me blame myself for everything while she started over with some smug consultant she met at a hotel seminar. And now he was back. Or maybe he never left. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to, because fate did it for me. As I turned to leave with Delaney, one of the event organizers came rushing out of the hallway looking flustered. Apparently, the man, Mr. Motivational, had been asked to quietly leave after another attendee accused him of inappropriate behavior during a private lunch meeting. Marcia had chosen that. That was the man she'd thrown her life at. I caught her eyes one last time as he was being escorted out the back. And the look on her face wasn't just shame. It was devastation. Because for the first time since she walked out of my life, she finally realized. She hadn't upgraded. She'd lost everything. We left quietly. No need for a grand exit. Delaney and I walked through the revolving doors of the conference center, stepping into the crisp Denver night. The city lights flickered like distant stars, traffic murmuring in the background, but inside my chest, silence. Not the dead, aching kind Marcia left me with all those years ago. No, this was different. This was peace. Delaney slipped her arm through mine, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for 5 years. She didn't ask about Marcia. She didn't need to. That's what made her different. She understood the difference between listening and prying, between standing beside someone and standing in their way. I glanced back once, just once. Through the glass doors, I saw Marcia standing alone near the coat check. Her consultant lover was long gone now. Her fake explanations, her power plays, her careful attempts to twist the story into something sympathetic, all of it had crumbled. What she was left with wasn't just embarrassment. It was reality. Unfiltered. Uncontrollable. I don't know what hurt her more, the fact that I didn't fall apart this time, or the fact that I had someone beside me who knew everything and still stayed. But either way, I wasn't her problem anymore. We took the long way back to the hotel. Delaney asked me if I wanted to talk about it, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel the need. I just smiled and said, no, I think I've finally said enough. And I meant it. Because moving on doesn't always look like revenge. It doesn't always sound like a confrontation or feel like a dramatic ending. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing not to bleed for someone who never once tried to stop your wounds. I didn't get closure from Marcia. I gave it to myself. In her silence, I found my voice. In her absence, I found someone who actually showed up. In her chaos, I found calm. And in the end, she didn't get to break me. She just set me free.